actually think that we need to separate us from our personal brands. And so a lot of people go, well, you just got to be more authentic in your personal brand and all this stuff. And while that's great, and while that's great for a season, that's often how it starts. What happens is when you're building a personal brand, you get to a point where you're like, I feel like I've got it trapped in this because it's so me. I feel like outside of business or outside of my personal brand, I feel like I can't grow as a human because my brand would then need to grow because we're like the same thing.
Hey friends, welcome to the Word Made Digital podcast on YouTube. I'm the host, Joanna LaFleur, and this is season 8 of the podcast. Thanks for joining, for catching these episodes. We're leaning into hope and positivity for the future because it's been a rough couple of years. So enjoy this episode of the podcast. And hey, if you want to check out 7 seasons of archives of the podcast, as well as tutorials, practical help for you in church communications, creative, websites, social media, we got it all here on the YouTube channel. So subscribe now and enjoy this episode. Joey Speers, welcome to Word Made Digital. I'm really pumped to talk to you today on the podcast because I've been kind of following your work for the last little while on social media.
Yeah, so excited to chat. Thank you for having me.
And you're a fellow Canadian, but you live in a warmer place.
Yes, I am as some people call me, I am an official snowbird at the age of 23. I live in California, sunny California now. And it's beautiful here, but I do miss living in Canada. I miss the seasonal stuff in Canada, but California's pretty hard to beat.
Well, I mean, I want to get into, your work and everything, but before I just say you have really life hacked this thing where I tried to go from like my undergrad to retirement, but apparently you got to put like 40 years in between. So you've somehow life hacked this in order to get there quicker. So good for you.
Thank you. Yeah, it seems like it. It seems like it some days, but yeah.
Hey, tell us, give us an introduction, give us some context about who you are, why you're there, and let's start there.
Yeah. So as I mentioned a second ago, I am a 23-year-old, so I think I classify as Gen Z. So I don't know what that puts in your head or the listeners' heads, but hopefully it's a good thing. I'm originally from Ontario, Canada, from a smaller town, about an hour and a bit north of Toronto. Born and raised in that area. It's where my whole family's from. Generations are from there. So to end up in California is a little bit weird. I was telling this story last night. It's a little bit of a funny story, but I got a tap on the shoulder in the Los Angeles International Airport terminal once. And turned around and it was a girl asking about my camera bag. And I was down in Los Angeles for some work. I was flying out of LAX back to Toronto, and this random girl tapped me on the shoulder, showed her the camera bag. She was really interested in it, said she was a photographer. And flash forward about a year, she's my wife, and we've been married for 7 months. I think about 7 months. I'd have to fact check that for sure, but I think it's around 7 months. So yeah, that's what kind of landed me in California. It's a crazy story. There's all these things that I could talk on forever that kind of made that what it is. But yes, I met my wife in TSA airport security line, which is a pretty crazy. Yeah, I know. Seriously. So next time anybody who's listening is in the airport, either give somebody a tap on the shoulder or make yourself available to be tapped, because you never know what's going to happen when somebody in the airport touches you on the shoulder. But so I live in Northern California. We are just outside of Sacramento. If anybody knows where that is, it's a great spot. Her family's from here, and so it's a great place to put down some roots. And it's a great place for my family to enjoy coming to when it's minus 25 back home in Canada. So it works for everybody. Yeah.
Well, and then, okay, tell us about what you do, because at 23, you're doing, I think, something at a scale or a level that most people would dream to be doing like by their 40s. And you at 23 are really leading something exciting. Like you're not just kind of working by yourself, doing your own creative thing. You're actually leading others. So tell us about the business. And then I'll ask more questions. I'm going to ask more questions after that, but give us kind of the big picture.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I'll give you the short answer, and then you can kind of go as deep as you want to go because I could talk about this forever. I'm normally not short on words, so I'll do my best to keep it
No,
short. But
we're here to listen to
when I
you.
was in yeah, when I was in school growing up, I had a really hard time. I've got tons of ADHD. I know everyone says that these days, but I have diagnosed ADHD. And I have different types of learning disabilities and processing issues. And so school wasn't really cut for me, and I wasn't cut for school. And I found that out quite quickly. I excelled in, sports and gym class, but anything outside of that, I couldn't seem to keep focused. I couldn't seem to have any desire to want to learn anything. And as I progressed through that, that naturally led me to creating my own fund, which often ended up, putting me in the principal's office or something. So I was quite a troubled kid growing up. And so I knew early on that I was going to have to kind of do something. If I wanted to do something somewhat successful, I was going to have to kind of carve my own path. And I struggled with that for a long time as the traditional route wasn't going to work with me. And then in the midst of my, bad years as a young kid, I remember getting to grade 8 and we had a new teacher. And it was first day of grade 8. So you're all excited, you're like, we're the king of the schools now. I'm again from a small town. So it's just like, you've been waiting to be at the top of the grade 8 class. Yeah. So I'm in grade 8. And I remember I got into my class in the morning and it was this teacher I just hated and she hated me. And we had a bunch of altercations in different years, and I'd been in different little classes and things of hers before. But basically, she stood up there first day and said, "Hey, if I read your name, you need to get up, pick up your chair, and you need to go to the hall." And so I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's interesting." So she read my name. She read a bunch of the other bad kids' names and a few other kids that got thrown in with us misfits. And as you can imagine, we're a little bit confused. We picked up our chairs and we went into the hall. And she said, "You guys are actually in a new class. So you're going to walk all the way to the end of the hall and you're going to walk outside and you're going to go into one of the portables that just got dropped off." So we got secondhand portables from another school because our little town school was growing. And so I remember going, what the heck? Like, who's the teacher? This is weird. I thought she was my teacher. I'm kind of relieved because I didn't like her. She didn't like me. It was going to be a year of button heads. And I walk into this portable. It's dusty, gross, musty. Like, it just smells like wet towels and stuff. And the lights don't work that well. They're flickering. As you can imagine this, and you're kind of like, okay, I just was riding this high of first day of grade 8 to now I'm kind of confused. And I see this guy sitting there. And he's got his head down. And he's kind of doing paperwork. And he's just like, "Oh, yeah, everybody sit down. Come on in." And so everybody sat down and he didn't even introduce himself. He called us one by one up to his desk to introduce himself to us rather than doing like a big class intro. And I remember walking up and he said, "Hey, I'm your new teacher." And I said, "Cool, like, good to meet you." And in my mind, I was thinking, well, this sucks. This is just another person that I'm going to have to disappoint, because that was my track record and I didn't know how to get out of that. Those were the grooves that I'd carved out for myself. And it's hard to get out of those grooves, as we all know, whether it's a habit or whether it's a track record that we create in any type of way in life. And so I remember thinking, man, there's another guy I'm going to have to disappoint. And he picked up a folder. One of the first things he did, this isn't it. This is a FedEx folder, but he picked this up. He picked something up like this up and he said, "Hey, you know what this is?" And I said, "Yeah, that's my IEP, my individual education plan." Basically, pages and pages and pages of things stating what I cannot do, what I'm incapable of doing, why I need help, why my brain doesn't work properly. And he picked it up and said, "Hey, I just want to let you know everything in this, none of these are actually walls. They're just hurdles. And I've heard that no one's ever taught you how to run and jump. And I'm going to do that for you this year." And I almost cried. I was like this tough, athlete little kid and captain of all the sports teams. And I get kicked off all the sports teams, because I was such a bad kid. And I'm like this like tough little jock guy. And I almost cried in front of all of my peers and this brand new teacher, because it was the first time that I ever felt, other than my parents and family members and maybe one or two people that I experienced in my faith walk through churches growing up, it was one of the only people in my life that ever looked at me as like an appointment and someone to do life with rather than a problem. And so, that changed my life on the spot. And it kind of put this seed in me. It taught me the power over that next year. He taught me the power of personal agency. He taught me the power of taking ownership over my actions. He taught me the power of, most importantly, this gets us into, this is the short story I told you I was going to tell you that's now kind of been a long story, but he taught me the power of rebranding, and being able to intentionally create the future you want to create. And that was the first time anybody had really helped me do that outside of my immediate family. And to see somebody in leadership and power, in education do that, he taught me how to learn, and it was an incredible year. Now, I didn't change like that. I had a lot of change to make. It was a slow process some days. It was a fast process some days. I broke, commitments I made to him. I did other stupid stuff that year, but overall, the year turned out pretty positive for me, and it changed my life going into high school. And I turned into this super positive, really big education fan, all this stuff going into high school, and it was just a complete shift. And so I remember, just getting into high school, and I had, like I said, I had known outside of school I'd have to create some stuff for myself. So when I was 11 and 12, I used to make lots of videos and just loved it. I used to do a lot of stupid stuff, extreme sports wise, jumping off bridges into water, and wakeboarding and skiing and snowboarding and mountain biking. And so I naturally, when you're growing up in a group of people like that, somebody has to film the stupid things you guys do as a group of little boys. So I always figured out a way to somehow find a friend's mom's camera or my mom's camera, and we used to film things. So basically that led me to starting my own filmmaking business when I was 13 and 14, which then turned into, over the years, as I learned how to take more agency over my education and start educating myself. And because I learned how to learn, right? He taught me how to learn. And so I kind of just disregarded high school. I still showed up every day and had great relationships with teachers and friends, but I didn't take it too seriously, because I was building a business. I would sit there in class and build a business. I would go home and I would build a business. And fast forward a couple years, it's now 2022. I think I'm in my 9th year as an entrepreneur. I've never worked another job other than like a ski instructor for fun. And I love it. It's been a great gift. And now today that looks like that little video business that I started as a young kid turned into bigger videos, turned into then shooting photos for clients as well, turned into getting paid to travel all over the world, done like 20 countries before I was 20, or before I was 21. Before I was 20, I think I did like 20 countries, getting to shoot lots of outdoor brands and stuff like that. And I noticed a problem. A lot of people would say, hey, well, we love what you did for us, but it didn't get us a great ROI. So then I was like, oh, I'm going to solve this problem, right? Because I was taught when I was in grade 8 how to be a problem solver and how to create the future that I want to create for myself and for clients, right? So then I learned about distribution, and I said, well, I'll start handling all your content distribution. I won't just make it, I'll distribute it for you. So then it turned me into an agency.
Because of course, if you create a great product for your client, or I mean, any of us, if people are listening are, pastors and creative leaders in church, or whether they're in the business world, like you create this great thing you're so proud of, but if you then hand it over to someone who the next stage in it is the distribution, or like, putting it on the platforms, and they just butcher it or don't understand it, then it doesn't matter how good your content was.
Exactly. Nowhere. So that's been a big lesson that I've learned over the years, is it actually doesn't matter how good the content is. Like the person who masters the distribution wins the audience, wins the revenue, wins all that stuff. Right. So, I started helping clients with that. So it turned me from a little video business into like an agency. Then we started running, Facebook ads and started hiring people to do stuff for me, building websites. And, as a teenager, I remember being in high school, having like people that I was responsible for, like helping them pay for life, which was crazy. And I was like, I'm like helping, hire a bunch of my great friends, and they don't have to cut down trees all summer for a living, now, or plant trees, or, shovel driveways. I'm teaching them how to create revenue for businesses by helping them, be a part of creative projects and stuff. So it was really fun. And, that led me till when I was about 19 or 20. And then I used to get asked as a normal Gen Z would, I grew up in, I like to say I got lucky on socials. I don't have a big social platform or anything, but it's not nothing. And I like to contribute that too. I kind of was at the right place at the right time. I was young enough that I had all the time in the world to focus on social media, but I was old enough to get it. I was kind of in that sweet spot when Instagram and all that stuff came out. So I would have people on Instagram asking me all the time, well, you're like young, how are you doing all this stuff? And so I used to love to help them because, again, had that seed sown in me from that teacher, loving to see how I could help people figure out, what's next for them and
Yeah.
how they can do that, how they can actually take agency over their lives. And so I used to help people all the time like that. And I remember I was in LA for a business mastermind that I got into for my agency. And I remember somebody said to me, looked at me and said, "Hey man, you got to stop giving away all this stuff for free. It's so good. You're so good at educating people because you understand what it feels like to be uneducatable by a system. So you're really good at helping people understand how they learn and then helping them, implement what you have to teach them. And you should create something that, you should create a container to help people with that." So instead of doing it for free over DM, I started something called Creativ Rise, which was a space for me to invite creatives who are super, super left-brained, really creative, learn how to be more right-brained and learn how to understand business. Because, until you understand business as a solopreneur, entrepreneur, creative, as until you can understand even the basics of business, you'll never be able to do your creative passion full time
Yeah.
because
'Cause
you have to
those
learn
are
business
two,
to do it, right?
yeah, those are like the two different skills. I think that a lot of people who are
Yeah,
listening, if they're in this world, they'll quickly discover there's like the skill that you have as a creative person, and then running a business, although it is a creative problem to solve, it is a different skill set. Like
totally.
understanding clients and proposals and sales
Hmm.
and even what to
Yeah,
price things at and
finances.
how to do
Yeah.
taxes. Like these are totally, and like managing employees. These are like entirely different skills. So you got into it
Hmm.
because you're this very talented person on creative stuff. And then you quickly realize, oh my goodness, like I have so many as you've described, hurdles to get over on this other side of things.
Yeah.
If this is ever
Yeah.
if I'm gonna survive.
Totally. So, yeah, I realized that I just have a huge passion for helping people that were like me. And I think back to my earlier years as a young creative, desperately wanting to do it for a living, as I felt like I had no other choice because I wasn't going to school. And I had to really, really pull strings and grind to figure out a lot of the stuff that I know now. And so I love being able to help shortcut creatives who are trying to learn business. And trying to do what they love full time, or even if they are full time. And there's a lot of people that go through what we've developed. So, and they make a ton of money, but they're unhappy with what they're doing in the creative field, and they want to transition a little bit. So, yeah, Creativ Rise today looks like we call it. It's an online education platform and community for creatives to learn business, so they can create themselves a world where they get to succeed doing what they love. That's what we're super passionate about. I run that with my wife. She's amazing at it. She's way better than I am at it. She comes from the wedding background. I come from the brand background. So it's probably a good combo for people. And there's a bunch of other people that we rope in, and we just try to do our best to build. We run masterminds, so environments where we're not the people that are like, "Oh, come to us, we've got all the answers." I always say we've got a few answers, but if we can put 30 people in a room who are all committed to each other for 6 months, like everyone knows somebody who somebody else needs to know. Everyone's been
Yeah.
through an experience, good or bad, with a client that's going to shape the rest of the group's knowledge on that topic. And so, yeah, we just try and create these containers where people can be themselves, where they can be vulnerable about the actual problems in their creative businesses, and or the shortcomings on what they understand about business, and then we try and patch those holes through community. And it's awesome. So that's kind of where that ends up today. And then through the process of all that as well, my agency, going back to that first part, my agency has turned into just a brand identity agency now. So all we do is we consult with churches, organizations, a lot of personal brands, different B2B businesses, B2C businesses, on how they can just clarify who they are. And the reason why that's really important is because when you can clarify who your organization is, and who that person's becoming. If your organization was a person walking down the street and you met them, what would they be like? Who would they be becoming? Who are they inviting into that story with them? And how do they serve people around them? I think if you can answer some of those questions, and we developed a process to really help people understand that, people just learn how to lead better. They learn how to, grow their profit margins. They learn how to, have better culture. And so that's kind of where I end up today. That brings us to present day. So I've got the brand identity stuff on one side, which is helping people define who they are as mass corporations and mass organizations. And then I've got on the other side, I've got the creative business platform, which is also kind of the same thing. It's also teaching people how to identify themselves as problem solvers and as business owners. So it's funny when you look at it that way. I really do the same thing, just in two different fields, all because of the impact that teacher had on me and that my parents have had on me, and that really kind of changed the course of my younger teen years. So yeah, I'm a product of my childhood and teenage struggles, and it's pretty cool to see how God shaped
Yeah.
different people into my life to help walk me through those things. And now it's a blessing to be able to be given ideas and people to support me, and for people that I can support too, to also build these dreams that are going to help people, can help other people, kind of redefine those things for
Right.
themselves. So it's really awesome.
And so when you work with all these different creative people, and so maybe in like a bit of group therapy here slash make, I mean, ultimately I'm trying to say, let's make people feel less alone. What are some of those
Hmm.
common themes that you hear from creatives that you work with? Of like the things that are like, the things that maybe people feel like, I can't talk about this because I'm embarrassed about it, or I feel like I should know how to
Hmm.
do this, but I don't. Yeah, what are some of those things that you hear regularly with the kinds of people you work with?
Yeah, totally. That's a great question. So I think the first one is, most people in the creative space get into the creative space reactively, meaning they picked up a camera one day, shot something, and somebody from their church said, "You're really great at that. Can you shoot my son's wedding?" And
Huh.
next thing you know, fast forward 5 years and they're a wedding photographer. But the truth is, it was a very reactive response that got them into that career. They weren't proactive about it. And so one of the biggest lacks that I see in a lot of creative communities and in creative individuals, myself included, that I've had to really learn to develop this over the years. And I think this is something that I've been able to develop well, and hopefully it helps people when I get to speak this into them, and hopefully somebody listening is going to get this. But a lot of people don't understand how business works because they got into it reactively. They weren't proactive about coming up with an idea and making it happen. And
Mm.
so um, one of the things that I always say to people is, like, you just got to understand the business circle of life. And I'm going to say this, and Joanna, you probably know this clear as day. But a lot of people are going to hear me say this and go, well, duh, but I've never heard that. No one's ever told me that. And so I think this is one of the coolest things, one of the biggest first switches that we see people have in saying, hey, the business circle of life is simply that money has always gone and will forever go from the person with a problem to the person with a solution. When you are, let's call it, when you're back in the 1800s, if you needed to take your family from Canada down to America, well, you either had to figure out how to get on a train, or you had to figure out how to get horses. So let's go the second route, because horses are a little bit more fun than trains. You had to go to somebody with horses who has the solution, and you had to offer them some kind of exchange to solve your problem, right? So whether it was some gold, whether it was labor, helping them work on something, right? And maybe they'd give you a horse, and then you could build a little carriage thing and a little wagon, then you could take your family somewhere. Well, we look at today's culture, right? It's like when somebody has a problem with their business, let's say they're bottlenecked in terms of uh, just understanding how they operate from a brand perspective. They don't understand how to talk to their customers, so they feel like they're losing money, and they're bringing on tons of new staff because their company's growing really quick. But because they don't know how to talk to their ideal customer very well, they don't know how to train all the new people, so they feel like they're super inefficient. They're not running well. Well, in modern day, that person has a problem, and they'll find me, who has the solution. We can run them through all the branding stuff we do, which is going to really help them. And that money is just going to transition from them to us, right? So I always say to entrepreneurs, people in the earlier stages, or people who feel like they've never been a proactive entrepreneur, someone who's only been reactive, you've got to learn how you fit in that business circle of life.
Yeah.
Because once you understand how that's just literally, that's the flow of it, it's never going to change. That's how business has always worked. That's how it's always going to work. Is you just have to position yourself around people that have problems and go, what problems has God given me to solve? Or what problems have I been, what problems, have I trained myself to solve, educated myself to solve? Where are those people hanging out that have that problem? And how can I go hang out around that and just offer value? Because that's how the money's obviously going to flow. So that's the first one. I think that's huge. People don't understand that. And once they get that, they're like, whoa, I now can understand what it looks like to be proactive and come up with a new idea and find who has the problem, offer a solution, figure out how it's going to work. And the second one is just finances. That is, we live in a world, and I got to be careful how I get into this, because I can be pretty anti-education sometimes when traditional education, due to my own story. Education is great. It didn't work for me. Actually, it did work for me. It taught me what I didn't want to do. It taught
Mm.
me how I didn't want to educate people. But yeah, we're not educated on finances. Like I was at a big guys' night thing last night through our local church, and 100 dudes hanging out in the backyard, hearing people speak, and it's kind of like a big Bible study thing. And I was talking to this young guy who just became a financial advisor, and he's a year older than me. And I was like, "That's so cool!" And I was asking him questions about what he was doing, and he was like, "Honestly, man, I don't know that much yet. Like, I didn't learn anything in school. I'm like just starting to learn about finances, and I'm a financial advisor." And I was just like, it's just crazy that we live in a world where even financial advisors don't know about finances, you know? And as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as someone, who would identify as that, or even someone who just wants to be a valuable asset to any organization you're in, if you can understand finances, it's such leverage, right? Because unfortunately, that's the currency the world has chosen to put value on. So, we're called to not be obsessed and love money, but I think we're called to be good stewards of it. And I think that's one thing that a lot of business owners fall short on, is learning how to manage your finances, learning how to pay yourself first, what that really means
Okay,
as a
let's talk
business
about
owner,
that.
how to pay. Yeah, let's do it.
Because I assume you're talking about the book Profit First, or that's an influence.
I actually haven't read that, but I've heard it's a great
Okay.
book. But I could be talking about that. I'm not sure.
um,
So when I
well, yeah,
just say the pay yourself
let's
first
talk
thing,
about this because this is the classic thing where, and I know this. So my story, as we're getting to know each other, part of my story is I
yeah,
was leading creative and communications in a mega church here in Canada. And
hmm
then I was hiring all these creatives who were working, on projects with me.
yep,
And some of them were, staff, but some of them were just contracted creatives for these projects or experts in something we needed. And I was
gotcha.
seeing how they were, invoicing the church, but that was like my introduction to this. And then I went out and started doing this thing on my own, left the church work to help, instead of just one church, help lots of churches do this creative and
Yeah,
communication thing.
awesome.
And then realizing, like, I have no idea how to price this. I have no idea what the customer can tolerate. I don't mean to gouge them,
Yeah,
but I mean, like, what is a fair price? Or like, you estimate something thinking it's going to be 2 days of work, but then you forgot all the administrative side, and now it's actually
hmm
5 days of work. So now you're not making any money.
hmm
Like, these are like those classic things that I did early on. But
hmm
you have this whole thing about pay yourself first. Let's talk about that philosophy for creatives. I
yeah.
think we don't do that very well.
Yeah, no, most people definitely don't do it very well. I'm guilty of that too. I'm always trying to change that. But the first thing to set up the pay yourself first thing is, I think that I believe humans are pretty incapable of not spending money. I think that money is not in a weird woo woo way, but I think money is like an energy. Like, I think it just kind of flows through things, right? Like a dollar you touch physically has probably been in thousands of other hands, right? It's because money just transitions from one person to another. We spend it on things, and we live lives. And so instead of being like, oh, you need to learn how to save money, like save money, I come from the other approach going, no, I think we're built to spend money. So
Mhm.
why don't we spend it? But let's spend it in a good way.
Right.
So instead of going, hey, I'm getting my paycheck and I'm going to spend, and I'm going to get to the end of the month and might even be running a negative, or I might have a little bit left over that I'm going to pay myself. Um, I say, first of all, paying yourself out of a company or paying yourself out of your creative business you're running is not going, I'm going to take, I got a $2,000 paycheck this month, and I'm going to take, I don't know, let's say 50% of it, and I'm going to put it into my personal account for spending. That's not paying yourself first. That's called paying yourself a living, like to live or something.
That's your
Paying
salary.
yourself
I
first
mean, that's
is
your,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, but paying yourself first in my eyes is actually going, I need to take a chunk of what I make and I need to pay myself first for my financial future. Because
Mhm.
as entrepreneurs, we're the only people that are responsible for that. Like there's nobody paying for my financial future. There's no one paying for my wife's retirement. And so paying yourself first is going, okay, when I get paid, I'm going to do two things first. And it's technically kind of paying yourself second in the way I teach how to break down finances. I always say first take off everything you're gonna owe to tax, because it's not your money. It's the tax man's
Yeah.
money. You're just holding on to it. And you do not want to get behind on that. I think we're called to steward our money well and
And
pay what
really
is not ours.
practically, when you say take it off, what do you mean? Are you like, you're not like taking the cash out of the bank and putting it in an envelope? So like, where, like, as practical as you can
Yeah.
be, where does that money go for you?
Yeah. So
Because
I'll
like
make
it
this
looks
really
like your bank
practical.
account's so huge, and then you realize all that money's owed to the government. It's not your money.
Yeah,
Do you
totally.
put that in a separate
So I'll
bank
make it really
account? What do you do?
practical. Yeah. So I go to the bank and I say, hey, I need 5 accounts. I need my main checking account. Then I need 4 free savings account. The first free savings account, again, you can get them for free at banks, so it's not something you should be paying for. It's really easy. So your main checking account, you pay $16 a month for, or whatever, and then under that, get 4 free savings accounts. The first one is the tax account. So the second I get paid, because of where I'm based, my company's still based in Canada, yet I live in California. I take 30% off, and I take 30% off of every single dollar I get, and I put it straight into a tax account. And I don't touch it because it's not my money. I can't touch it.
And
It's
that's
not
your
my money. I'm
estimate
holding
on
on
like
to it
what
for the
you'll
government.
owe, basically.
That's an estimate. And I estimated that based on, everyone can do this. Just go Google your federal taxes and your provincial taxes, or if you're an American, Google federal and your state taxes.
Yeah.
It's really easy to find, and be conservative. You can overestimate, because it's always great to have overestimated what you think you're going to pay in tax. It's not great to underestimate it, right? So I overestimated. I take 30%, I put it straight into my tax account. My second account is called future investments. This is paying myself first. If I'm going to pay the tax man 30%, it's only fair I pay myself in my future, my financial security 30%. So I take the next 30% of the money and I put it directly into that future investments account. Now, for some people, that's a lot. That's a huge percentage. They wouldn't be able to live on what's rest and operate their business. So these are all aspirational. You want to be making, a certain amount of money where you can do this, right? So, or cutting your living expenses down, you can do this. So 30% to the tax man, 30% into a future investments account. Now, future investments, it's important that your money's not just sitting there. You got to make your money work for you, right? We live in a world today, inflation's at massive highs,
It's not
and
looking
even
good.
if
The price of
inflation
gas
wasn't at
in
highs,
Canada,
yeah, everything. And
I think
so
it's
you
like a
want to make,
dollar seventy today for a liter
yeah,
of
it's
gas,
crazy.
if
That's
that makes
insane.
any sense to
So
Americans.
we live in an expensive world. You might as well look at every dollar you make as an employee and go, how do
Yeah.
I make every employee make me money, right? Of an employee can either make you money, or an employee could cost you money. And if you think about every dollar as an employee, if you put that employee in a savings account and it doesn't do anything, you're not investing it, it's costing you money. It actually is. Statistically and mathematically, it costs you money every year because of inflation. So I put that money to work. I invest in stocks, different funds, crypto. We got a couple real estate moves coming up, hopefully hopefully soon. That's going to be great for our financial future. So 30% of the tax man, 30% to our future, our financial future. And then out of that, I take about 5% of every paycheck as well, and I put it into a rainy day account that just stores up some money that, while my mass amount of savings, my future investments is invested, I want to make sure if anything ever happens, I've got a little bit of liquidity, some cash, if I needed to pay for a couple months of living or a year of living expenses, right? Or any type of emergency that ever happens. So that's my rainy day account. That's my fourth account. So we have our main checking account, tax account, future investments account, a rainy day account. And then the last one is just a very, very simple, like a giving account. We funnel off money that we want to give so that we're intentional about not spending it. Because like I said, humans spend money. So if we spend it to our giving account, it's really easy to then spend it on giving to something that we feel really aligned with, and something that our hearts feel like we want to give to. So those are the different accounts I operate out of. And those are, now I'll say this, those are, that's how I run my corporation accounts. I have personal accounts that kind of match that. So every time I take a paycheck from the company, personally, I would kind of do the same thing. The little giving side, I would do like a little rainy day side personally. I would do a tax side personally, because we have to pay personal tax, obviously, and corporation tax. But I chunk it out like that. It's really easy. It's amazing because you don't have to be financially savvy to do that. It's really simple. Get out your phone, do a little bit of a calculation, as soon as you get paid, and you watch month over month as your money grows. And as you have different areas that you've spent your money, it feels really good to spend your money towards something that's good, right? And then obviously that main checking account, all the money, the percentage that's left in that main checking account, that's what you operate your business out of. That's what you pay for people on, and you do all that other stuff. So that's how I do it. That's what we teach at Creativ Rise. It helps a lot of people. Is it the best system in the world? Maybe not. If there's one that works better for you, awesome. But is it a system that works for a lot of people? Yeah, the point is to have a system. And so if you can have a system, you'll be in great shape. And it's a great step towards creating a financial future that's more secure And I think that's stewarded well. Like I said, I really want to keep harping on that. Like, I think as Christians and as leaders, like, we're just so called to steward our money well. Like, it's so biblical. Like, we can't give of everything we have if we have nothing, because we haven't stewarded our money well, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's so great to be able to teach yourself how to steward your money well. And I think the percentage breakdown is a great way to start that, so you can end up in a position, where you can give to things you want to give to, and you're not feeling guilty about it, or you don't get behind on your taxes. Just it's a great thing to do.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of it. So I
So,
hope that helps somebody.
changing gears because you've mentioned it, but we haven't gone too deep. You talk about this branding thing. Let's talk about
Yeah.
personal brand, because I think everybody is like it's kind of this thing that you need, but also are a bit uncomfortable with. Like, it feels easier to
Hmm.
brand, or feels less uncomfortable to brand a company or a business,
Yep.
or even a church. But when we're talking about like
Hmm.
ourselves or a person, it can feel a bit icky. So give us some thinking on personal brand, how to not do that in a slimy way. And by slimy, I mean
Hmm.
like there's people who the reason we don't like it is because we see people who are just selling all the time, and it feels like
Hmm.
their brand. Well, they are a brand. They're not like being like a real human being. So
Yeah.
talk to me about, and if you have examples of some brand of personal brands that we may know that you think have done it well, whether that's like,
Yeah.
Kanye or whoever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, talk to us a
Totally.
bit about branding.
Yeah, totally. So this is a great question, and this is a question that we could talk about, I'm sure, for days. But yeah, branding in general is sticky. It's a difficult conversation, but it's one of the most important conversations. And the reason why I say that is because, just to define brand, brand is not just your logo. It's not just that, all that stuff, your colors, your fonts. Brand is very simply your reputation, right? So when we think about Apple, we think about the reputation, right?
Yeah.
And so, if you can change your perspective on brand to go, my brand is nothing but my reputation. A logo, sure, that's a part of your reputation, but it's, how do I make people feel? How do they feel when they interact with what I'm doing? How do they feel when they're impacted by what I'm doing? And then the second part of brand, which is really important, is brand identity. And so brand is external. It's what people feel. It's the reputation, right? Brand identity starts within us. Brand identity is the character of who we are as a company, or who we are as a personal brand, and how well we act on that character, those characteristics that we identify we want to be, who we want to become, that dictates our external brand, right? And so when you understand the differences between those two things, it's really important to utilize both those tools, right? Brand is kind of a result of how well you execute your brand identity, which again is the core characteristics of who you want your company to become in the world, who you serve them, how you treat people when conflict arises, right? Like, all of those things. How do you give value? So, um, some of the ways that I think people mess this up is, and some of the ways that it gets icky is, people actually, and this might be an argument that you are familiar with or you've never heard, but I actually think that we need to separate us from our personal brands.
Mm.
And so a lot of people go, well, you just got to be more authentic in your personal brand and all this stuff. And while that's great, and while that's great for a season, that's often how it starts. What happens is, when you're building a personal brand, you get to a point where you're like, I feel like I'm kind of trapped in this because it's so me. I feel like, outside of business or outside of my personal brand, I feel like I can't grow as a human, because my brand would then need to grow, because we're like the same thing. So a great example of that would be, like, if I started a brand and I just loved cooking, and I was cooking every day, and I started, Joey Spears became a cooking blog, and it
Yeah, but
blew
there's
up.
more to you
If
than
I one day
cooking.
woke up
Yeah.
Yeah, if I one day woke up and went, you know what, I don't love spending every single day doing this and feeling like that's all anybody knows me for, or that's all I've even attached my identity and my worth to, that's a hard place to be in. And so I think that's why building a personal brand is so difficult, and that's why it's much easier to build a church with a name on top of it, or a company with a name on top of it. So the quick solution to that, and I'll give you an example of somebody who's done this really well. A quick solution to that is, you've got to separate your personal self from your personal brand. And the best way to do that is by actually creating a character for your personal brand. And we do this in the branding stuff that we do. We literally develop a person that you can be while you're at work. And so when I walked downstairs, I work from home. So when I walked downstairs this morning and I'm sitting here doing this podcast, I am Joey, I'm being myself, but I'm also tapping into like this guy that we call Tim at
Yeah.
our company. And we
Okay.
act as Tim because Tim shows up with a smile. Doesn't matter if my coffee machine was broken this morning or not. I'm going to hop on this podcast and have a smile because that's how Tim has agreed. That's what we've all agreed Tim will show up, you know? So I can walk in, I can kind of tap in as Tim. I can act as Tim. I can give value as Tim. I can see people the way Tim would see people, despite how I'm seeing people personally a day. And at the end of the day, I tap out and I go back to being Joey. And so it gives you the separation where you're allowed to grow the brand and you're also allowed to grow yourself personally in separate directions. And that's one of the best feelings ever. And I think that's something that really helps people grow a personal brand is when they get that. And a great example, I think you know him, Carey Nieuwhof, local Ontario pastor, leader, and he's just a great guy. He's a great friend of mine. He's been an awesome mentor to me. We did brand therapy with Carey. And the reason why he wanted to do it was he said, I'm a personal brand, but I have a company. I have people that work for me. And Carey's like, in order to continue to create the impact that we want to create as a team in this world, we need to get more clear as a team how we can grow as a team. Because if I'm talking as Carey, if I walk in as Carey every day and just say, hey, be more like Carey, sales guy, be more like Carey, marketing guy, be more like Carey, administrative guy, people can try their best, but they're not Carey.
Yeah.
Right? No one's Joanna. No one's Joey. We're all so individual. But if Carey can step aside and gather his whole team and say, okay, what does it look like for us to create a new identity that we can all show up as? I, Carey, can show up as this person. You, this person can show up as this person. Marketing person, salesperson, we can all agree to be this person, because if we all be this person, the company is a really healthy version of ourselves. And so we did that. And now every day when they all get to work,
even
separate from Carey the person,
Carey Nieuwhof can show up to the Carey brand as this version that we've all agreed to.
Yep.
Even if
so Carey shows up. Yeah, he checks in as he doesn't check in as Carey. He checks in as somebody else that the whole team is agreeing to check in as. And because of that, they all have extreme clarity on who the brand is, who they're helping, and then how those two things connect. Those are the three big points of brand identity and branding that I think really matter. It's who are you? What makes you guys you? Who are they? Who are you guys trying to serve? And then this is the third piece that a lot of people miss. How do those two connect? What are the things about you and what are the things about them that really work? And then what are the things about you and things about them that actually don't align that well that we need to stay away from, right? What are the do's and don'ts? So yeah, it's a beautiful dance when an entrepreneur or even a church, a senior pastor can stop trying to force all his staff to be him, run programs the way he would run them, and go, okay, we're actually going to develop a new identity for who we want to show up as. And it's going to be clear. Everyone can understand it, whether you're in children's ministry or whether you're like running a conference, the biggest conference this church has ever put on, or you're the senior pastor. Everybody can understand what identity we need to be showing up as, how we give value to people. And so we can all leave our personal stuff aside. Now, it doesn't mean that you still don't, represent some of the personal things that we all carry. Because I'm not saying don't be unique in the ways we all are, but brands are actually way healthier when it's a lot of unique people coming together and taking all the things that make them unique and building it into one person. And then moving forward as a company or an organization or a church, rather than going, we're just going to mimic the senior pastor or the entrepreneur and everyone has to be like the founder.
Well, then in theory,
because that doesn't work.
Yeah. And then in theory, maybe not if your brand is called Carey Nieuwhof, but in a church, in theory, then the senior leader, the founder syndrome thing where they can't leave, everything's based around them. They could leave and the entity of the brand remains because it was never them. It was some separate thing to them.
Yeah, totally. Well, and that's a great example. That's I would say that my local church here does a great job of that. I was telling you offline, Joanna, before we jumped into this conversation, like our local church has multiple senior pastors per campus because they designed the church to never be an upside down pyramid falling on one single person, one single woman or man, And so they've designed this system where it's shared leadership, and that leadership is shared through the whole top to bottom system of all their programs, all their conferences, all the Sunday morning stuff. And they've only been able to do that by going, okay, if a new senior pastor is coming in, he has to agree that he is going to be himself, yes, but he also has to be this person that we are as a church. Yeah. Because if he decides to leave one day, he can't take the church with him. This church stays here. This is where the community is. And so we've decided that this identity is what's best for the community. And because of that, we'll all be able to serve this community best, no matter who joins and who leaves, right? And that's where your organization gets really powerful. That's where your impact gets, exponentially more valuable. And that's where it also creates more longevity, right? So I love this conversation. It's super fun.
Yeah. Okay, Joey, I've got, just as we end, I've got a few questions I'm asking everybody on this season of the
Let's do it.
podcast. So we'll try and do them as quick
I
as
love
we
it.
can. For other people, what is the best spot you've been to that they should travel to?
Oh, that's a great question. If you've not been to, oh man, if you've not been to New Zealand, I'm really biased about New Zealand because a lot of my best friends are from there. But New Zealand is a gorgeous country. It feels like what North America potentially felt like culture-wise, maybe 20, 30 years ago. Now, I wasn't alive when that was going on, but it just feels like it's just cool. The government doesn't feel like they own you. And I'm not saying that in a political way. I just mean like everyone kind of like helps each other out. And it's a more like, it's not as individualistic as Western culture. Now, they're obviously Western culture too, but North American culture, I love it. If you haven't been, it's a great place to go and spend some time. And if you're into surfing like I am, great waves, beautiful beaches, mountains to ski and snowboard too. It's
Amazing.
beautiful. Food is awesome. Coffee, some of the best coffee in the world if you're a coffee person. So New Zealand's great.
What is a book that has changed how you think about something?
That's a great question. I would say anything by Donald Miller or Simon Sinek. I love that. Or Bob Goff. Oh my gosh, so many good ones. But I'll go with the most recent one that I read that like was the most impactful for me. Infinite Game by Simon Sinek, helping us transition our minds from thinking super finite and start thinking about an infinite game where it outlasts us. Our impact outlasts us. And it's not a competitive, we're fighting against this person. It's like, hey, if they're also fighting for the same cause to, in my world, help educate creatives so they can run their own businesses. If somebody else is fighting for that too, they're not my competition. They're on my team, as we push this cause into the world. And that it's just a really cool perspective shift for me. I don't know if you've read it, Joanna, but it's a great book.
Yeah,
great book.
I love Simon Sinek. He's awesome. I've not read that book though.
Yeah.
2 more questions. What's a movie that's made you cry?
Oh my gosh. You know what? I don't think I've ever cried in a movie. And the reason for that is I don't watch a lot of movies. I didn't grow up watching movies at all. I was that, like I told you earlier, that weird kid who kind of sat in the basement on his laptop that school gave him because he had an IEP building a business. So I didn't really watch movies. There's some movies I love, but I don't think I've ever cried in one because I don't know if that meshes with my personality type and the amount of movies I've watched.
I mean, not even the Lion King, Joey,
I couldn't even tell you what happened in Lion King. I don't think I could tell you what happens in Lion King. I don't remember. I know I've watched it, but it would have been years ago. I couldn't tell you. So
okay, well, the last question is: you're at an ice cream shop. There's 50 flavors. What's your go-to?
Yeah. That's such a great question. My wife would love you for asking that question. She's a huge ice cream fan. And she would take a while to answer that. Mine would be simple. I love a good cookies and cream. Love good cookies and cream. My favorite place in the world, if anybody's listening to this and ever makes their way there, if you ever go to Newport Beach, Joanna, if you're ever in Newport Beach, go to the peninsula at Newport Beach, and there's a place called Milk and Cookies. And it's homemade ice cream, and they bake these homemade cookies, and they put the cookie like in the bottom of the cup. It's a hot cookie, and they put the like fresh ice cream on top of it, and the cookie just melts in your mouth. So I get like a chocolate chip cookie with cookies and cream ice cream, and it is potentially the greatest thing I've ever tasted in my life. So that's probably my answer.
Hey, Joey, thanks so much for your time. If people want to find you, find your work, reach out to you to work with you, where do you want to send people on the internet?
Yeah, really simple. I think if you just hit me up on Instagram at Joey Speers, JoeySpeers. I'm not related to Britney Spears. We spell our last names differently. If you find me on there, you'll also find a link to everything else, or you can just click even better the message button, shoot me a message, and I would love to connect with people. So this is awesome. Thanks so much for having me on, Joanna.
Hey, thanks, Joey. Lots of energy, lots to learn from you. Had a lot of fun. Thanks.